Please find the files used in this video tutorial along with stuff not covered on YouTube if you visit github.net2dev.io. Follow me. I got a couple of questions, and let's see if you can answer yes or no. Do you have a web application, and can you tell when was the last time a user logged in and which user did logged in? Number 2, can users leave feedback, likes, and follow other users in your application? Can users add custom profile pictures, add custom banners, change usernames, or even create usernames? If you answer no to all these questions, this video is for you. And if you already have an application that does all this, it's not using a database as powerful and as simple as MongoDB, we have to talk. I'm going to show you how we can integrate MongoDB to any web application so then you can start giving this added benefit onto your users. Your users are going to be able to create their own user profiles. They're going to be able to change the profile picture. They're going to be able to add comments onto a particular section. They're going to be able to chat on the application. And you will have full visibility into what your users are doing and which side of the application are those users interacting the most. So then you know where do you need to work and improve the application so then the overall activity in the application doesn't focus in a particular section, but goes across the board. Not only that, having user accounts in your application will give you also the benefit of having an email database that you can use as extra marketing. Not implementing a database is not an option. We have to work with databases, but we are working with a database that I guarantee you that after watching this video, you're gonna say, hey, that wasn't so hard. If you haven't heard, or you may have heard about Mongo database, MongoDB, by the way, this video is not sponsored by MongoDB at all. I use MongoDB because it's extremely simple to set up. We just use a couple of API calls and we are writing a full-blown database on the cloud that integrates with Next.js with only 3 API calls. One API call to insert data onto the database, another one to update the existing data, and finally to find data. 3 API fetch post actions. That's all it takes. Having a database integrated into your application opens the door into having a full-blown user visibility and activity across all the platform services. Let's say you have social media application, just like YouTube, just like Instagram. Any social media platform will have a section where users can hit that follow me, subscribe, can hit the like button, can leave comments, can chat and interact with other users. This is where we need a database for that. Usually we see databases as something as complex. However, working with MongoDB makes it extremely easy. I'm telling you, you're gonna see this video and you are going to realize that you should have done this a long time ago. I am going to explain to you step by step how do we integrate Next.js with a Mongo database or MongoDB. Not only that, we're going to be using Mongo Atlas. With Mongo Atlas, I just log into a web interface and build my databases, connect those databases using simple API calls. All we need to do is do an API call. We're going to be using Axios to do that. It's a simple JavaScript function that is going to talk to MongoDB and is going to be able to pull all the information that you need to see in real time for any of our users. Hey, in the case that you are going to deploy this for user management, I can know when was the last time the user logged on, what page did that user visit, which users are having the highest revenue in the platform, I can also visualize the entire application operation from a user engagement perspective. How can you provide your end users more than just a buy and sell button for NFTs? Let's build auctions. Let's add feedback into a particular NFT collection. Let's do all that. And for that, we need to know MongoDB. We need to work with MongoDB. We are going to discuss how we will use MongoDB to gather all that data and store all that data so then the end users can have their own profiles. They're going to be able to customize that profile, add banners, add username, add email, and all that information that those users are using to sign up in the platform, we can use that for our benefit. We can have email-based marketing because we now have a database that will serve us as an email marketing campaign strategy. We can start sending emails to those users. Databases are definitely a must in any web application. Okay? One last thing, we're going to be also integrating IPFS to store all the user media files, pictures and video. We're going to integrate IPFS to store all that data, but then also provide us the HTTPS URL that we will then store in MongoDB. So then our web front end can call those values and render the pictures on the website. Hey, if we're not working with MongoDB, we are not gonna go to the next level. Let's jump right in and let's go ahead and make this happen. Let's go. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by creating an account in MongoDB. We're gonna make an account. There is a free account option that gives you access to a full-fledged database on the cloud. Okay, so the first thing that I'm gonna do, log into my account. Once I am logged in onto the account, the first thing that we're going to see once we logged in onto the account is going to be this dashboard. So what this dashboard is going to do, it's going to give us access onto the database itself, plus it's going to give us access to the data API. So the first thing that you have to do, deploy a database on the cluster. And let's see if I can make another cluster. I can show you. Yes, I can. So it's going to be a shared cluster because it's going to be the free version, but then you can, depending on what you want to do, I assume if you're just learning, you want to go with a share. So then you practice. Okay. We can select any cloud provider. They got the three main cloud providers here. Going to select AWS, and we're just going to deploy this cluster in the North Virginia region, but then you have many other regions to choose from. Okay. So let's go ahead. What I'm going to do, I'm going to have the free tier. And basically all it's going to do, it's going to ask us for the cluster name. We're going to say cluster 1. We're going to leave a default. I'm going to make a brand new cluster. And yeah, so it already has another cluster, but I just want to show you what you need to do to make it happen. Yeah. Okay. So in my case, I already got my free cluster, so I cannot make another one. Then I can hover over the cluster itself, and I can look at the cluster health, the status, the traffic, and all that. Everything that has been queried onto this particular database that lives in this cluster will show here, okay? Let's build a new database. So in order for us to do a new database, to build a new database on this cluster, we're gonna go under collections, okay? And I already got a couple of databases that I've been playing with, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and build a new database. This database will be called N2D. I am just gonna call this database so then we know that this is the name of the database. Type database, okay? Now the collection name is gonna be basically N2D collection. I'm just going to make it a collection. The collection is basically where all my index in that database will be hosted. So if I have an application that it's going to do some instant messaging, chat, or whatnot, inside that chat collection, I will be having all my accounts, all my user accounts, right? Inside those user accounts, then I have my properties, which are the username, the password, the email, picture, etc. Okay, so we have built the database. So now all I have to do, I'm going to navigate onto that, and I got my collection. Okay, so now we have the database and we have the collection, so then we can start talking using our API. Next thing I'm going to do, I am going to build a next.js base project, and we're going to configure it so then we can start talking and interacting with this MongoDB database. Okay, so I got my next.js application. So let's go under the application itself. This is basically the working folder. Okay, so the first thing that I have to do, as a matter of fact, before I can even work with the database, I have to create an API key. I forgot about that one. So let's go ahead and build an API key. Under my dashboard in Atlas, what I'm going to do, I am going to head to Data API, and I already got a couple of API keys created. So what I'm going to do, I am going to click under API keys, and we're going to build a new API key so then we can do everything from scratch. Let's create a new API key, and let's call this net2dev Mongo, like it's just a demo key, and we're going to create that API key. We effectively have an API key that we can use to interact with the database. Now, I will copy this, okay, and we will use this across all the application, okay? Another thing that you have to work with, and this might throw you off, you have to go under network access, okay? And I obviously will obscure my IP addresses, but you need to tell the database from which IP is going the calls to be executed from, okay? So from which IP are we communicating onto this database? Because that's security. We want to make sure that we filter or limit what IPs can talk to that database, okay? So in this case, I have my two public IPs. I am obviously not showing them, but those are my IPs, okay? So we just need to make sure that we have that on the access list, or else you're not going to be able to talk to the API. So you just add a new IP address. If you don't know how to find an IP address, what's my IP? And obviously I'm going to obscure my IP, but that is my IP, okay? All right, cool. So you just need to add this here. All right, let's continue. First of all, I gotta make sure that I got my API key stored. Cool, I got it here. And by the way, I will be deleting this. So cool, so that's my API key, awesome. And let's work with it, okay? The first thing I have to do, I have to create an environmental variable that will store that private key. We're going to generate an environment file, env file. So we're going to type .env, okay? Inside this .env, I'm going to store that API key, okay? Close it. So we're basically creating this new API key. Now, the next step, obviously I got to save this. In order for us to use encryption for this key, I will be leaving this. You have to update your next config with this, and then FS will work, okay? The next thing that we have to do to store and protect this key locally, I have another video that I will rather prefer do it that way, but in this demonstration, I'm going to do it locally, but it does work, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go under the server itself. I'm going to log in real quick to the server. We have to install two things. One, Axios, because we're going to use Axios to communicate to the database. And number two, .env, that is a module that will allow me to interact with that key in the application in next.js, okay? We don't want to send that key in clear text because remember, this is client rendered data, which means that I can find what the key is, okay? So npm I Axios, okay? So we install Axios, and we also install npm I.env. So we're going to install those two dependencies, and we should be good. Let's go ahead and restart the server. Okay, we can continue, okay? Perfect, let's continue here. Now, first thing that we have to do in order for us to interact with Mongo API, we do have the key already, right? So let's go to index, and let's go ahead and let's just use this default page, right? First thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create the function to store user accounts. Okay, so we're going to make two fields to store the username and an email address. Okay, so we'll make that account. Then we'll do another function to find data from a particular account. The third one, we will update an existing account. In this case, let's update the username of an existing account already stored, okay? The first thing that I will be doing in the index file, so what we need to do, first of all, I'm going to import Axios because we're going to be working with that module. Then the next thing that I have to do, I have to import this API key so then we can work on it in the index. So I can invoke that on the application itself. So what I want to do, I want to import the .env module, and I will be importing the key that way because I want that to be server-side rendered. Now, I don't want that to be client-side rendered. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to include that .env. Okay, so we're going to require that. Okay, so you got it right here. So now I can use this Mongo key to authenticate myself to my database, okay? Because the key will be awesome. Now what I have to do, I have to build the application itself or the web front end so that we can create a new user account. Let me go ahead and remove the header. Perfect. And now I am going to call this 3, and let's call this create your account. Okay. And then the first section I need to have is an input section, right? Because we're going to expect information from our end user. And this input is going to be, let me enter your username, or create your username. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to add another field to create the email. Create your email. Okay. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and delete that and see how that looks. So all I'm going to do right here, I'm going to delete this footer entirely. We'll leave main, and let's go up. That looks good. Okay, let's see how that goes. Save, and let's go back and look at that. Perfect. We got now create your account, and then we got the fields. So let me expand this a little bit more. There you go. Awesome. Awesome. So we got create your username, create your email. Okay. Now we need a button to say, create account or something. Let's go ahead and do that. Button, create account. Cool. Done. Let's go back. Beautiful. Let's add some space to this button. So what I want to do, I want to type styles, style equals open, and let's say margin top. And let's say 2 pixels. Save. A little bit better. Okay, cool, awesome. Now we have to build a function that I can use to send the Axios call and store this information onto the database that we created. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back. Okay, so let's start the async function. And this will be create account, right? And we're going to say, the first thing I'm going to do, I will be expecting the information from the end user. So we're going to create 2 constants. The first one is going to be constant username equals, and then it's going to be document, because we're going to use the DOM, and it's going to say query selector. Okay, and then I'm expecting from the ID of name, and that ID will be user name or user, right? That works. And then that is referenced to value to string. Okay, awesome. So so what I'm going to do, I am going to attach this to the input. So let's go ahead and do that. Input, and we're going to type name equals what name? User. So that's how am I going to fetch or grab that information from the user input using the DOM, the HTML DOM, and pass that onto this particular variable. Okay, so we're done with that. We're going to use this same entry to expect the email. Okay, so now we got the username, we got the email. Now the name of this entry will be email. Okay, so I did for the username. Guess what? I have to do the same thing for the email. So create your email, input, and let's call this email. Okay, so now we got username and email. Now we got to build the fun part, the Axios post to call MongoDB and post the information to the database. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to invoke Axios post. Okay, now I need to tell Axios what the URL for that database is. Okay, how do you find that? Let's go back. I'm going to show you a trick. Let's go back. Let's go to Data API. I'm going to go under the test your API. So you go test your API. Okay, and let's now find the database that I created along with the collection. Okay, so we're going to select entity database, select entity collection. Now I should get the entire URL right here. The last, and I'm going to explain this to you, the last section in the URL is the action that you are going to send to the database. Okay, in this case, this is to find information. We're not going to use that for this particular function. Okay, but I'm going to show you which one it's going to be. So we're going to copy this entire URL. We're going to go back and paste it. Okay, so open quotations V. And now we have to change this to insert one. Okay, which means that those two values, I will be inserting those two values onto the database. It's going to create a new entry. And now, when I post this, right, what I have to do, I'm going to press comma because now I'm going to send that post request. Okay, inside the post request, check this out. First thing I got to do, I got to open the JSON input and I'm going to say collection. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is collection, comma. This is the information that MongoDB is expecting. Okay, we're going to call this collection, what's the name of the collection that we created? Into the database. Let's make sure that it's because it's case sensitive, I got to make sure that it's right, is the right one. Okay, so into the capital D. So let's go back. Okay, awesome. So we got the first one. Now we're going to do a comma. Now we're going to type database. What's the name of my database? Into the database. Okay, so now we got those two. By the way, this is not database, this is collection. So let me go ahead and fix that. Into the collection, into the database. And then now I need to specify the data source. What's the data source? This will be the cluster ID. In my case, it's cluster 0. How do I find that? Let's go back. Cluster 0. So basically you got data source, cluster 0, database, and collection. Make sure that it's set that way and you should be good. Database collection, cluster 0. Perfect. Awesome. Now, we are going to call document. And I now can build that database entry. So the first thing that I got to do, I am going to generate, or I am going to assign the first property in the database. The first property in the database is any name that you want. What's the first entry that we want to store on the database? It's going to be the username. So let's type user, colon, and now I can invoke that variable that will store whatever information was input from the user, okay, which is the username. So the user types in the blank, we get that information and send that to the database, okay? Next, email. What's the constant email? That's it. So now you can see that I'm effectively calling username and email. And every time that this runs, it's going to generate a new entry, okay? So awesome. Let's say someone decides to use the same username and email. It's going to generate a brand new entry because the way that MongoDB works, it generates a unique ID. So you have to do some sort of function handling to make sure that it's not duplicated. So you have to like compare, find if it's already there, then say you cannot because it's already there. Account username already in use and stuff like that. Okay. Cool. So this is basically the call to the API, to the database to do that entry. Okay. So now what I have to do, I am going to close, make sure that everything is closed. Okay. So all the entry that I should be sending out to the database is closed. Now what I got to do, I am going to send the headers in this API call, which is very important. What am I expecting to send? I am expecting to send content type. What's the type of that content? It's going to be application/JSON. It's expecting a JSON formatted output or input. So it's expecting to send this in JSON format. Okay. And what else do I have to provide? Guess what? API-key. That's how we authenticate to MongoDB. What's the API key? It's going to be whatever was imported from the environment. In this case, it's going to be Mongo key. Mongo key. Sweet. And now the last thing that I got to do, and we're done. I have to catch, okay? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to catch in case there's an error. We don't want to see that error displayed in the web interface. So what I'm going to do, I am going to catch that error, and I'm going to handle that error with a simple console log or something. The idea is not to see that error displayed in HTTP, so we're handling that way. Console log, in case there's an error, all failed. And then I can say plus error. So I'm effectively calling whatever is inside here. So it gets me the output in the console log so that I can know what the hell is going on. Okay. Cool. So we got that, right? Now, one last thing before we can proceed to test. I want to show to the end user that the account was created successfully. So we need to make sure that we tell the user, hey, your account has been set. So what I can do, I can expect the, as soon as I complete this function, display success, okay? And what I'm gonna do, I am going to display account created successfully, okay? We're done. And I want to send that using the DOM, and I want to do the get element by ID and show that in HTML. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type document get element by ID, and then I want to type whatever I should be expecting in HTML to grab that value, which we can say display. You can type anything, result in my case. And we're going to have a couple of other results. So I'm just going to type result 1. So then I can use 2, 3, and 4. And then what is that result? It's going to be the inner HTML from display success. Okay, so with that, if this function executes completely and successfully, I should get that message out in the HTML code. So let's go ahead and do that. I am going to place below the button, I'm going to add another margin bottom. I'm going to say 2px as well, so that there's a little bit of gap between the button and the output. And I'm going to type h2 header 2, and then I am going to tell this to be ID. What's the ID? Display result 1. So now what's going to happen once the function completes and it creates the account, I should get that message on screen. Cool. All right. So the last thing I got to do, and we can test this out, is by invoking or applying this into my button object. So let's go to the button and let's do that. So it's going to type onClick equals, and then let's call this create account. And there you go. And yeah, that looks good. So this is on. All right, let's give it a shot. So I'm going to Control S. Let's go back. Let me refresh. Okay, here goes nothing. Let's type, my username is going to be net2dev. Let's type net2dev, email info@net2dev.io. Create account. Whoa. Awesome. Let's take a look at the database and see if the entry was created. Let's go back, close, let's go back to the database. Let's go to the cluster, collections, And moment of truth, moment of truth. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Awesome, awesome, awesome. There you go. We got the first account in the database, okay? So now that we have that, let's go ahead and do the following. Okay, so let's go back to our application. So we now have the account. Let's go ahead and try it again. Let's go ahead and we'll go back and do some magic. Okay, so I'm gonna make another account. Let's call this John 4000. You remember back in the day when I don't know if you're that old like me, year 2000, people used to make the usernames 2000. Like, so let's remember those days. John2000 at gmail.com. Okay, so we're gonna create that account, and sure enough, account created successfully, and we can even refresh, and we'll have everything default. So let me go ahead and refresh. We should get John there. Let's see. We got John 2000. Awesome. So we got the second one in the database. Cool. Now what we want to do, we want to find the email for a particular username. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make another function, but this time what I want to do, I want to find a particular detail in an account. In this case, I want to type the username to find what the email address is associated to that username. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back. Now I'm going to use the power of copy and pasting. So what I have to do, I am going to make another div. Let's make another section. This time we are going to copy this. Just paste it down here. So now we got another section. This one is going to be find user's email. Okay, so we are going to find the user's email. And this is type the username. Okay, so we are going to expect the username. And this input name has to be different because we're already using this for the first section to create a username. So in this case, it's from user. So let's say this is from user because it's the username that I need to find that information to. And in this case, I don't need another input box. All I need is from user. And then display result number 2 will be the output that we obtain from the call to MongoDB. Okay. And this onClick button should be referenced to the function that we're going to create, okay? So what I'm gonna do is build a button called find email, okay? So we're just gonna create a button. The button is just to find the email. So the function name will be called find or get email, okay? Let's go up. Now what I wanna do, I wanna copy this whole thing because the function is kind of similar. There's certain things that we are going to get that we have to update. So in this case, the function name is going to be get email. Okay. And now we are reusing username. Okay. But then I don't need the email. And now the name will be from user, which is the new input that we created. Okay. And will be username. Okay. Now there is an option in MongoDB in the API to do a find query using Axios. In this case, we're going to type find1, and we need to tell the MongoDB database, hey, find this particular entry in the database. In this case, I want to find a database that it's associated to this particular username, the username that the end user will type in the HTML page. Okay. So what I need to do now, instead of document, remember, document is to create a new entry. We have to filter because now this will be a filter or a find info kind of action. It's different. So we just type filter. And what information that I need to find? What's the association to this filter will only be the username. Okay. Which means that I will be finding anything that is associated to the property of user that has whatever information the end user typed on the web application, okay? Once I have that, right, this is slightly different from the first action or the first function. Now I need to store this output in a variable, okay? So now what we need to do, we need to add another constant here, but this time the constant is going to be output, because we want to then use the value that we obtain from this call, so then we can determine what the email address is going to be. So by having output stored in a constant, then this entire call will be stored here, and from there I can fetch, or I can get the information that I need, in this case the email address. Okay, everything else is going to look the same. So we got the filter, filter, find me the username, anything that matches this particular entry, I want to store that into output. Okay, once we're done with that, obviously we want to cache the error, and then I am going to say let, okay, email, which means that it's the value that we obtain from email, okay, will be equal to await. Now we need to open that output, okay, and we are going to catch obviously any errors that we failed. So we're going to type error, and then we're just going to say console log error, tell me what it is. But else, I want to now email, I can find the information using this particular object. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I want to get, check this out. I want to say let find email equals, check this out, email dot data. The data will be the data that I obtain from that promise, from the values that we obtain or we stored in this particular constant, which is output. So what we're going to do, data, then what's behind the data? The document. Remember when we created that entry, it was a document entry. So we're going to type document. And what inside the document are we looking for? Email. Okay, so that is the entry that I will be obtaining, or the value from email. Email will be the property name inside that particular document. Okay, so that's what we need to find out. And we're going to find out from this output. And by the way, let me change this because it's kind of confusing. So we're going to say is from output. So we're going to call this from output. Okay, so now from output, get me the data, the document, the email, whatever you obtain matching the username that I type on HTML. Okay, now we got that value. We need to make sure that we display that in the web interface. So display success in this case will be email found, and then the email itself. Type plus find email. There you go. What am I going to display in the HTML? I will be calling this inner HTML DOM display result 2, and let's change that to be, no, actually it's correct. So display success. Awesome. So that should be it. Now I need to make sure that display result 2 is down below here. It is. Awesome. So we're done. Get email associated to the button. Yeah, let's test it out. Control S. Let's go back. Refresh, and there you go. That's our second function. Find user's email, type the username. We got 2 entries. We got net to def and we got John 2000. Let's try net to def. Find email. There you go. Awesome. Beautiful. Let's type John 2000. Now we are obtaining the information from the database. Find email. Beautiful. Awesome. One last thing, and we're done with this. You see the power of MongoDB. We deployed this in no time. All right, one last thing. I want to update an existing record. What we want to do, we want to allow the users to change the username. If they want to change the username, they can do it. Okay? So what we are going to ask the end user is to type the old username and type the new username. So that's how we obtain the username, and then we can associate that and modify it, okay? So let's go ahead and do that, and we're done with this. So I have to make another section right here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open another div, close that div, and the power of copy and paste. We're just going to copy this, paste it. Now let's modify it. In this case, it's going to be update username. Awesome. Enter current username, right? And now we need another input field. Enter new username. Okay. So we entered the current username, enter the new username. Okay. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to type current user and new user, because that will be the name of the input. So then I can call this in the function and display result 3, because that will be the third result. Okay. And I am going to change the button name to be change username. Okay. That's about it as far as HTML. There's nothing else. Okay, awesome. So now what I got to do, I am going to copy this whole thing. And we're going to do a little bit of magic here. So this function is going to be called update user. Okay, so let's make sure that we labeled our last button to be update user. Right? So we're done with that. Now I am expecting from username, because I need to find that account. I need to find that entry on the database, which means that the first entry, the current username, it's going to reference the call to change the entry. Okay, so I need to first ask the end user, hey, tell me your username, so that you can change the new username, right? So let's go back up, and this is our new function right here, update user. And this will be current user, right? Because that's the new entry. Okay, and let's call this current user. Okay. Now the call, okay? What I need to do now, I need to find that entry, and I can modify that entry. Okay, so what I have to do, I have to say output. I can leave it an output, but then I can say update 1. So this is how I am going to tell the API call this is an update action, right, to the database. It's update 1. Again, the parameters are the same because we're still dealing with the same database. I now have to say, I have to find that input, right? Because I want to make sure that we are modifying the right entry or the right account. So in this case, filter user current username. That was the input that we provided, right? Right here. Everything stays the same. Now, I need to make sure that we do get the output from this account, which if I do get the output from that account, it means that that account exists. So then we can modify it. Else, it's not going to tell you. It's going to tell you, hey, invalid account or something like that. Let's make it happen. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to say from output, I can leave it in from output. Now what I have to do, I'm going to say if from output dot data document dot user. Remember, we're looking for that user. If that user returns, or that value returns as null, meaning that it doesn't exist, this is what I want you to do. I want you to display user not found. Okay? So if from output data document user equals null, that means that you didn't found the user account. So he typed or the user didn't type the right account. Okay, so in this case, display result instead of success, and this message will be user name not found. Okay, else proceed to do the write or the update. Okay, so by the way, this is find, not update, because I need to first find the account. Okay. Then once I find it, then I can go ahead and do it. Okay, so this is like, yeah, I can literally update without even changing, but I want to make sure that there's some sort of security on it. Again, this is not the right way of doing this. Is just a demo. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to display result. Okay, we got that. Now, else, check this out. Else, we are going to write that entry onto the database. What I have to do, I have to just do another call right here onto the same database, but in this case, I am going to effectively change that account. Okay, so else run this update function. So update 1. Okay, now this is a little bit different. I am going to filter use current name, but then I want to set the changes. Okay, how do I do that? I have to add another entry below it called update. That will be the action to update an entry. Inside of it, we are going to create this action of set. So you type it that. And now we inside set, we call the user, and we are going to type new user. Okay, and by the way, I forgot about that. What I want to do, I am going to create another constant for that new user. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that below before the post, so that we have the information available to update that entry. So current user, let's call this new user, and let's confirm that this is the information that we will obtain. New user, perfect. Okay, new user, new username, and guess what? I'm looking for that current username, and you want to change that to new username. Okay, so in that case, it's effectively changing. You know, I want to find this username so that I can update that to this new username. Okay, and I believe we need to close it here, and we should be good. There we go. Awesome. Now display success equals username updated. Cool. So now if the action process successfully and no errors, we should display this to the end user. Okay, cool. All right, so we got everything good to go here. Let's go ahead and save it. Control S. And let's first of all make sure that this is associated. Yeah, it is. Let's go. Let me refresh, and there we go. Update username. Enter the current username. So the current username, and by the way, let's make sure that my error, it's going to be displayed correctly. Oh, yeah. So this has to be changed to 3 because we need to show that in the HTML. If there's an issue, we need to tell the end user that there was an issue. Okay, so that's good. All right, current username. First of all, let's see if it alerts if the user is not set correctly. Let's type Robert, which we know it's not there. John. By the way, I think, you know why? Because I am never going to have a user, because I am not going to have any output if the user doesn't match. So that's why we're not able to pass this entry, but I'm going to just go ahead and save this. Yeah, I just need to see if I get null here, then that should do it. Let's give it a shot one time. Perfect. Awesome. So yeah, so I was like making a mistake right here. So I cannot say that user because we're never going to have that entry if the user has not been found in the database. Okay. Else, let's change a user that we know exists. Next to dev, let's call this Mike. Let's change this to Mike, and we're going to change the username. Username updated, which means that it was able to find that. Okay, let's go back to the database and make it happen. Let's go ahead and refresh and see if we change the username. Whoa, awesome. There you go. If I want to change John 2000, no problem. Let's go back. Let's do it right now. Say John 2000. So let's make sure that it's all lowercase. John 2000. And let's change this to be Robert 2000. Okay. Boom. Done. Let's go back. S. And let's see. There you go. Awesome. Did I told you that it was going to be easy? I told you that it was going to be easy. All I am going to ask you for is, do you start practicing how to do this call by yourself? Go spin up a new Next.js project instance, integrate the Mongo database, and do a simple interaction. So then you have confidence that you can go ahead and interact with a database. Hey, it didn't took that long. So now you know how to work with MongoDB. What we're gonna do in the next video, and this will be the final video, we're gonna do all that graphical interface in our NFT marketplace so users can create their own user accounts. All they're gonna use to sign onto the application is their Web3 wallet. We're not going to ask for any passwords. The authentication will be done using a Web3 wallet, which is insanely powerful. So you don't need to worry about complex passwords. You don't need to worry about people getting their accounts compromised, because I will be looking for an authentication request from the user wallet. And I'm going to be matching that request to the database. Alrighty? So that's it for this video. I hope you like what we have done so far, and now you can call yourself a MongoDB expert. Alrighty? I hope that you liked what I've shown you and I teach to you in this amazing tutorial. If you do, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to. Hey, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.